Thank you, Mr. President. We commend the Slovenian presidency for convening this important debate, and we are privileged to see former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon amongst us today. And I am grateful to his briefing and clarity of thought, as always. We could agree to much of what he has said, the multitude of challenges and the best ways of addressing them, cooperation, diplomacy, respect for international law, and compliance with global agreements and obligations, and inclusive reform are the key words there. And let me also thank Ms. Dial for her presentation. President, this is a time of exceptional global turbulence. Conflicts are raging with devastating humanitarian consequences. Violations of the UN Charter and international law are becoming disturbingly routine. The geopolitical rivalries, foreign occupation, terrorism, hate speech, and widening inequalities are undermining global stability. At the same time, combined shocks of debt distress, climate emergencies, and slowing growth have reversed the hard-won development gains, particularly impacting the global south. Confidence in multilateral institutions is eroding, and the international order we inherited is under serious stress. At such a moment, principled leadership is indispensable. It requires responsibility, vision, political courage, moral clarity, and fidelity to the principles of the UN Charter. Peace cannot be sustained through selective application of international law or through silence in the face of violations. A leadership for peace must be anchored in prevention, dialogue, cooperation, and effective multilateralism, including the full use of regional arrangements under Chapter 8. The Pact for the Future reaffirmed our collective commitment to multilateralism and the 2030 Agenda. Yet, words alone will not deliver peace. More than 100 developing countries face a growing SDG financing gap. Failure to address this gap will deepen instability and conflict. Leadership demands urgent action through concessional finance, debt relief, and fulfillment of long-standing development commitments. Leadership for peace also requires a strong and proactive Secretary General. Article 99 of the Charter must be used as an early preventive tool, not as a last resort. Pakistan appreciates the clear, bold, and principled positions taken by Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Independence, integrity, and sound judgment, among others, are qualities member states would look for also in the next Secretary General, who would be expected to strengthen all three pillars of the United Nations equally and exercise good offices proactively and without fear or favor. And President, while demanding such high standards in the Secretary General, the member states must also live up to their own obligations under the Charter, its purposes and principles, and particularly Article 25, wherein all member states, and I quote, agree to accept and carry out the decisions of the Security Council. We cannot tie the hands of the Secretary General, violate the Security Council resolutions, and sideline the UN, and then expect the Secretary General and the UN to deliver. In line with its charter responsibility, the Security Council itself must demonstrate leadership through consistency and credibility. That entails greater focus on conflict prevention, addressing the root causes of conflict as well as strengthening and more effective use of the UN's peacekeeping and peace-building capacities. The Council's Resolution 2788 reaffirmed the primacy of peaceful settlement of disputes. These tools must be actively employed to resolve festering conflicts and long-standing disputes without selectivity and double standards. There should be full use of the International Court of Justice. The Council must help secure compliance with ICJ's rulings and also consider extending the Court's jurisdiction to all issues on the Council's agenda. Pakistan seeks peace and stability in South Asia, but peace cannot be a unilateral pursuit. Jammu and Kashmir remains one of the oldest unresolved disputes on the Council's agenda. It requires a just settlement in accordance with the UN Charter, relevant Security Council resolutions, and the will of the Kashmiri people. Something that India continues to violate and deny. India's unilateral suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty, which is a rare and enduring example of successful diplomacy, is yet another blatant breach of international obligations that undermines regional stability and endangers the lives and livelihoods of millions in our region. The Security Council must treat all disputes on its agenda with equal seriousness. When dialogue is rejected or the Secretary General's good offices are blocked, and bilateralism cannot serve as an excuse for inaction. The Council has a clear responsibility to uphold international law and ensure implementation of its own resolutions. From Gaza and other conflicts in the Middle East to Ukraine to Sudan and other situations in Africa, peace can be realized only with willing and committed parties demonstrating leadership and readiness to comply with international law. Our collective desire for a more effective and fit-for-purpose United Nations also requires visionary and responsible leadership. Sovereign equality, democracy, representation, and accountability are the principles that underpin such reform. And in our view, the answer lies in revitalizing the role of the General Assembly on one hand and addressing the fundamental issues confronting the Security Council on the other, including the use of veto as pointed out by Mr. Ban Ki-moon. Experience tells us that adding new individual permanent members, hypothetically that is, will only entrench paralysis and exacerbate this problem. It is besides the fact that this demand is unfeasible and thus the biggest roadblock to reform. The Uniting for Consensus proposal offers a practical, inclusive, and achievable model based on elected seats that provide for rotation, enhanced regional and cross-regional representation, and better accountability to the general membership. Reform for all, privilege for none. That's our motto. President, no nation can secure peace alone. It is a collective endeavor, requiring leadership, cooperation, and genuine multilateralism. Pakistan will continue to work with all member states to uphold the UN Charter, advance justice and rule of law, and stand for a vibrant multilateral system that delivers for all peace, dignity, and shared prosperity. I thank you.
I thank